Welcome to our talk about the power of nudging for virtual learning environments. My name is Thomas Wernbacher and I'm going to introduce you to the concept of nudging. Nudging derives from behavioral economics. It was introduced by Thaler and Sunstein back in 2008, and they won the Nobel Prize for economics for their concept, their approach. It's strongly related to gamification, persuasive design, and of course it's a behavior theory. And it's mainly about giving people small nudges into the right direction on a voluntary level, so without the need of consent by participants. I want to show you some examples. One of the most prominent ones are buffets. So basically you see healthy food in the front so that it's easier to grab the healthy food, and the unhealthy food is hidden in the background. So the Coke, for instance, is hidden and the salads and vegetables are up at the front. Basically, it relates to decision-making processes. This is a really complex process going on inside the human mind. So you have the short-term memory, the long-term memory, you have external stimuli which have to be processed, and in the end the decision has to be made. And the basic assumption of nudging is that this decision-making process itself is flawed, so you need to nudge people into the right direction. That's also the aspect that is criticized the most, that humans are seen as sheep who have to be guided into a certain direction, because they can't make the right decisions even though they have the knowledge about the consequences of their actions. As I said, it's strongly related to gamification, persuasive design, and behavioral theories. And I want to give you a short glimpse in all three of these different aspects now. So that's my hometown, Graz in southern Styria, and at the main train station you have the stairs you can take and the escalator, and on the stairs they basically introduced calories. So the calorie for each step are printed on the steps, so you see that in the end you are able to burn about 5 calories if you take the stairs in comparison to the escalator. And this really works quite well. A lot of people are taking the stairs now instead of the escalator. This is an example of Firefox. They also introduced some nudges, so short text messages. This one is relating to music instruments. So basically to tell you that you get more creative if you play an instrument. This is also from Graz. It's a comparison or a game between Graz and Vienna. And it's about collecting cigarettes that lie on the street. So it's about basically recycling and also collecting trash, and the city with more cigarettes wins in the end. So that's the reason Graz is basically filled up with cigarettes in comparison to Vienna, because of course we love Graz and it's a much better city than Vienna is. It's also used in operating systems. In this case, it's screen time. There's a similar system at Google Play. And this screen time feature basically tells you how much time you spend using a smartphone, and tries to limit the time you spend on websites, for instance, checking your mail. So it's mainly about quantifying the time you spend with a smartphone, and it should start a reflection process that you should maybe invest your time in other things as well. Persuasive design and nudging is based on 3 tricks, I'd like to say, that derive from psychology. On the one hand, you have framing, you have anchoring, and you have priming. The first, framing, is all about the wording of a certain message. As you see here, it's 2 different treatments, and just the wording is different. Like, for instance, you have a 43% chance of saving 600 people versus 43% chance no one will die. So it's positive and negative framing, and people tend to pick the positive one, although the numbers are the same. The second experiment is, in my opinion, even more interesting. In this case, there was an anchor placed inside the text. So it's about donating money to save seabirds. On the one hand, you have the answer of $5. So would you be willing to give $5 for the seabirds? And on the other hand, you had an answer of $400. And people with the answer of $400 were willing to give $143. That's really a big difference in comparison to the $5 or $20 answer. This is forbidden now, but back in the 50s, there were these subliminal advertisements going on in cinemas. So short messages were displayed for a very, very short time, like milliseconds. For instance, hungry, eat popcorn before the break. And if this message was displayed, the assumption was that people would go to the buffet and pick up some Coke and popcorn, and that really worked, but it was prohibited back in the 70s. And there's this cognitive dissonance, which is affecting all of us in our daily lives. So on the one hand, you want, of course, to keep healthy, to eat healthy food, to do sports. But on the other hand, the donut tastes really well, or the cookie. And even though you know the consequences of eating donuts and cookies, you pick them because you don't really think about the consequences, or at least they're not really present. So it's all about motivating people to stay healthy and try to align their perception and their thoughts and opinions with their behavior, because the behavior often goes in a complete other direction. And that's the main thing nudging is about, to guide people into the right direction. But of course, it's not as easy as it looks. On the one hand, you have really simple mechanisms like the behaviorism, where we give cookies, or if you get rewards if you do the right thing. And on the other hand, you have the intrinsic motivation, basically meaning that you don't need any external stimulation, you don't need any rewards, you just want to keep up with a certain activity, for instance hiking, and you don't need a badge. Like in this case, it's a real badge to keep on going up to mountains. You find the activity itself pleasurable, so you like the activity and you like to continue doing it. But who decides what is right and wrong? These are mainly the decision architects. These are scientists or experts from different fields. And the assumption is that they basically have to know about what the target is, of course. They need to know the target group. They shouldn't make any mistakes, any errors, and they should be benevolent. And of course, the last aspect is criticized a lot because it's not really clear, or you can't really make sure that all decision architects do this, apply the knowledge in order to do good and to do benevolent things. It's mainly about guiding people into certain directions, so it can be both good and bad. And of course, nudging is a powerful theory that can be applied especially in the educational context. And that's the reason why we're giving this talk, and try to give you some insights and inspiration how to use nudging in your daily education. Now we come to the second part of the talk, to persuasive design. Persuasive design is an important part of nudging. As you see here on the right is the urinal fly, which basically led to a reduction of 60% in cleaning costs. So it's mainly about designing objects in a certain way that a behavioral change will occur. And that was mainly the case. If you use this urinal fly, you have much less cleaning costs. So it really works. The fly itself is also used now in modern approaches like video games. So basically you can steer a racing car if you aim right. So you don't need to fly, you basically steer this racing car as a video game. That's a more modern abstraction of the fly itself. Second interesting mechanism that really works quite well is the default setting. So people tend to pick the default setting. For instance, they stay on the Google results on page 1, they don't go to page 2, or they pick a certain selection, like for instance Amazon Prime. It's really hard not to pick Amazon Prime because this option is pre-selected. What's interesting in terms of organ donation is that, for instance, in Austria, there is this opt-out, and in Germany you have to opt in. And in Austria, you have a donation rate of 99.98%. So almost every citizen in Austria is basically willing or donating his organs or her organs after they die, in comparison to Germany, who have a rate of 12%. So it's just about the default setting. And of course, there is a theoretical foundation. I think the model that fits best is this fog model. It basically introduces different types of triggers. You have facilitators, sparks, and signals, depending on your personal motivation and your level of knowledge. And you can basically pick a certain type of trigger in order to achieve a certain behavior. That's really an interesting theory. I would recommend you to take a look into the fog model. It can be used in the educational context quite well. And of course, it's about design and also the stimulus response. Like, for instance, it should be easier to pick a mug if it's placed in the right direction. So if you're right-handed, it's easier to pick the coffee mug if the handle is on the right. So it's also about designing user interfaces in a way that they are easier to interact with. This is a really good example in terms of the environment. You have these paper dispersers, and the more paper you take out, the less is the tree cover in Southern America. So that's a really good and visible example of how to use persuasive design principles in real life. The second one is an evil one. It's basically about making places less attractive for homeless people. In this case, there are spikes on a bench so that it's not really comfortable to sit or to lie on. And of course, persuasive design is broadly applied in the digital context, in e-commerce. This is an example of an quite popular booking platform. And you see here on the left certain tricks that are applied, like for instance, actuality. Then on the top, you see the reviews, like the star system. To the right, you see the savings. So you save a lot of money if you book the room now. You have the spareness in the middle, like there are only 2 rooms left. So you really need to book now, and the hotel is likely to sell out soon. So all these are different nudges that should basically result in the booking of a room. So that people looking at this interface should basically be motivated to book the room as fast as possible, even though the numbers might not be right. This is an example of a famous place in Graz, Austria, again, for the third time. It's really interesting because we used this picture in a research project, and now it's a really fun place to be because a lot of concerts are happening there. But back in the 70s, it was a parking place. And we implemented this time travel feature so that people could see that in the past it was just a parking place, and it took basically some citizens to tell the government, please, we need more space. We want to use this place differently in order to change the current system. So that's a nudge from our research project, Walk Your City. Of course, you can apply nudges in a playful context. In this case, we drew a tree, but there weren't any leaves on it, and people walked through green paint, and by walking they left steps, and the steps were the leaves of the tree. So the more people walked, the greener the tree got. Now I would like to hand over to my colleague, Alexander Pfeiffer, who will continue with digital nudges.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for your interesting part. Let me just share my screen. I'm now continuing with the digital nudges and nudges from game environments. So when we speak about digital learning environments, for example, it's all about design and where people click, what people see. And I like to start with an example from the banking industry and with the Revolut Bank. So basically they are the masterminds regarding those digital nudges and design and digital user interface design. And what they do perfectly is that you start with an interaction, you insert your telephone number, you click on go, and at the end, it only needs 24 clicks to open a bank account in Europe with Revolut. While with the classic banks, we are nearly at 100 clicks for doing the exact same thing. There's a web approach called stick.com, and Thaler was actually one of the advisors of this project. And on this platform, you can start your very own nudges. So for example, from losing your weight, doing exercise, quit smoking. And what you do is that you set your goals, you set the stakes. This is optional, but that's what it might be all about. So basically you can say that if you don't meet the goal, you donate money to a charity, or maybe you even send money by PayPal to your biggest enemy. Then you set referees, or you ask for referees, people that basically confirm that you either achieved the goal or missed it. And you can invite your friends for support. So for example, if your goal is to lose weight, and then week by week you make a photo of your kilograms. Of course, you can cheat making the photo, but I think most of the people are actually honest regarding uploading their goals here. And it's really used by quite a lot of people. And as you see here, there are 34 million US dollars in the line of stakes set if they fail to reach the goal. Nudges in digital games, I think that's a really interesting part actually. And there was, so Riot Games, they are the creators of League of Legends, one of the biggest titles in esports, and they had a really toxic community. So people were fighting with each other. So what they started is that in the loading screen, they simply wrote, "Did you know players who cooperate with their team win 31% more games?" And simply with that little message, as Thomas already explained before regarding the positive text messages, it truly helped that the players were more supportive and did not blame their colleagues from their own team. Another very famous nudge, which is amazing, is from World of Warcraft. So basically when you log out in one of the capital cities or in a pub, you get double experience points when you log in the next time for a certain period. So why did this start with this nudge, or why is it so famous and important? On the one hand, in World of Warcraft, people pay monthly fees. But if you, with this nudge, that if you actually achieve something in the game while you're not playing, getting more experience the next time, you keep the players a little bit out of the game. So this helps in regarding to online addiction prevention, but it also helps to save the cost because the internet transfer is less on the servers, and of course the game masters don't need to answer that many questions or solve issues of the players. Then we have games or online game, mobile games like Clash of Clans. So what you see here is the shop, and it says that here are 5 new items. And this is also a nice animation. So basically the first thing you look at is if there is any particular new thing going on in the shop. If there's if there's like a special price for an item, you should not miss. And basically they use this little nudge of this nice design of the shop button in comparison to the other buttons that people start to purchase items with real money. But even people are using the design of their base as kind of an informal nudge, and this is something I really like. And during the Corona crisis, someone, although this was a real competition, it was in the Legend League, someone created his base that the walls write or say "stay at home," and I think this was it was really cool. So I had to do a screenshot of this. Nudging in education. Basically, you can apply most of the things or all of the things Thomas has been talking about before, which really encourage you to only think about positive nudging, or to at least mean your efforts in your design in the classroom in the most positive way. What we do at Donau universities after the online exams, people had to make a smiley on a piece of paper. And as you see, they were really, our pupils were really, students were really smiling after they passed the exam. So we started with those little things. But of course, when you design your learning environments, you can try to set those nudges that maybe your students try to explore even more of the content than they need to pass the exam or to write the paper. Nudging is already used in the classroom, of course, and one of the things that some schools in Austria are currently testing is this noise traffic light. So basically, the pupils in the classroom see if they are like too loud or if everything is fine. And of course, the teacher can set rewards if they are not too loud during classroom. So 90% of the people who listened to this lecture subsequently developed an idea for the use of nudges in their lessons. Well, this is something we can't prove yet, but at least this is something that we hope our talk was helpful. Thank you very much. The team consists as main researcher Thomas Wernbacher from Donau-Universität Krems, Simone Kriegelstein from the Austrian Institute of Technology and the University of Vienna, and Stephen Betzina from the Ministry for Education and Employment in Malta. And my name is Alex Pfeiffer. I'm associated also with Donau-Universität Krems with the University of Malta, where I do my PhD, and currently I'm a postdoc at MIT. Thank you very much again, and if you have any question, please don't hesitate to contact us.